On today's show, Barry and I play coach for the day. Don't look now, but Marvin Bagley is back. The question is for how long? And is it time for the Kings to just blow it up? That's all coming up on the Royal Report.
Good morning, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Royal Rebounds TV and episode 5 of the Royal Report. Happy Friday, everyone. I know the Kings are not doing too well this week, but we are happy to be here and we are happy to have you here on the show with us. If you're a Kings fan, make sure you hit that like button down below. We'd also love it if you hit that subscribe button, and you can hit that notification cowbell down below to find out when Calvin and I put out a new video.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on another fabulous Friday here on the Royal Report. We're going to get things started, as we always do, with some news from around the league. Starting off with a huge clash of potential finals matchup between the Milwaukee Bucks and the LA Lakers on Wednesday night. Giannis showed up in a huge way, dominating in the game. The Bucks won 109-102. Milwaukee's MVP recorded 47 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block en route to the Bucks' big win at home in a big, big way. He also shot 78% from the field, including 3 of 4 from three-point distance. Barry, LeBron James was absent from this game, and the Lakers certainly felt his absence. Any updates on when he could return?
He is getting ready for a return to action very, very soon. It could be as soon as this evening. Giannis is playing incredible this season. He's having a down year as far as field goal percentage, but he's playing his usual bully ball self despite the struggles from the team. So it'll be interesting to see if this team ends up making it to the finals this year. Same with the Lakers, right?
Yes, same with the Lakers. Injuries have definitely bitten both of those teams in the ankle to start the season. Another team that is no secret to injuries are the Golden State Warriors, and they perhaps got some good news this week as well, as Klay Thompson has finally been cleared for 5-on-5 in practice. This doesn't mean that he's going to be returning to the court in a game anytime soon, as Coach Steve Kerr said the other day. He did not make the road trip with them this week, but Klay has been cleared for 5-on-5 in practice, which means, as he tweeted out the other day, the return is coming, which is great news for Warriors fans.
And the Warriors are sitting atop the Western Conference with the best record in the NBA. They could be scary good when Klay Thompson returns. I know they're many people's favorite to make the finals this year. I think adding Klay Thompson only helps move them towards that direction. Let's take a look at the Eastern Conference. It seems to be upside down right now. You have the Bulls, the Hornets, the Cavs, and the Wizards all in the top 6. The Wizards are number 1 in the Eastern Conference, and the Bucks, Raptors, and Celtics are all on the outside looking in. What a strange year for the Eastern Conference.
Yes, very, very strange. The 2 teams that made the Eastern Conference Finals last year, Atlanta and Milwaukee, are currently in 11th and 12th place in that conference. However, it is very, very crowded. First and last place are only separated by 6.5 games in the East compared to 11.5 games out west. Barry, is the Eastern Conference the better conference?
I don't know about that. We're West Side till we die, so I'm going with Western Conference. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to jump into your Sacramento Kings week cap.
Welcome back to the Royal Report. It is time now for your Sacramento Kings week cap. Sacramento Kings fans could point to this past week as the defining moment of the season. After terrible losses to the Oklahoma City Thunder and Minnesota Timberwolves sandwiched around a resounding win against the Detroit Pistons, this could be the make or break moment for the Kings season. This recent struggle has Kings fans calling for Luke Walton's head, figuratively, of course, as well as a big trade to shake things up. Barry, can you explain why the Kings are struggling so much, and where do we go from here?
6-9 on the season. They have been struggling the past couple weeks. They're in the midst of a 1-6 stretch of games. It is really unfortunate. It is rough to be a Kings fan at this moment. Many people are calling for, like you said, Luke Walton to get fired. They're calling on trading Tyrese Haliburton or De'Aaron Fox. Kings fans just want to make a move, and they want to end this playoff drought. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to end anytime soon. I've been very positive on the Kings over the last couple months, the past couple years, hoping that they will finally end this streak. But unfortunately, I do not know if it will end with this group and with this coaching staff. So I want to move on to our next category. The Kings lost a lot this week, so I'm moving on from week cap, and let's talk about blowing it up. So that brings me to even more questions for this team. If you are going to blow it up, where do you start? There is a lot of different ways to rebuild a basketball team. You could do a small retooling, trading a few players, trying to bring in some other guys and help rebuild around this core. You can completely blow it up and trade everybody. You could make a move for a big name star, or you could just go the straight tanking method, trade everybody away and just get draft picks and build through the draft. This Kings team has a few young pieces to build around in Davion Mitchell, Tyrese Haliburton, Rashawn Holmes is not that old, and De'Aaron Fox is not that old either. So, Kyle, how are you feeling about a rebuild at this point?
Well, I'm not ready to hit the detonate button just yet. As you mentioned, the Kings have been losing a lot lately. They're 6-9 on the season. However, they're still very close. I think only 3.5 games out of the 6th spot in the Western Conference, which would bypass the play-in tournament and give them an automatic playoff berth. There are still a bunch of things to like about this team. They're 4th in the NBA in points per game at 110.7. They're in the top 8 in offensive efficiency. Defensively, they're still not where they need to be, but they're improved from last season. And I think most people would agree that the roster is talented enough to make a playoff push in the Western Conference. So to me, that means it's time to make a coaching change. For some reason, this team has just not been able to figure out how to play under Luke Walton. It may not be 100% on his shoulders. However, he is the person to blame right now as the head of the snake for how the team plays night in and night out, the rotations, all of that stuff. So in my opinion, I don't think a big trade is necessary just yet. I think the Kings can still continue to make some improvements and build on the season that they're having. Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, all these guys. But I feel like it's time to finally pull the plug on Luke Walton.
Yeah, I made a prediction, a couple nights ago during a live that Luke Walton was going to be fired in the next week and a half. That's just looking at the team struggles. That's looking at the news articles I've seen posted lately and the upcoming schedule for this Sacramento Kings team. I don't know if I would do that if I were the GM of this team, but I think it will happen. If I were the GM, I would probably wait through the end of this month, see what happens. There are a ton of tough games. I'm going to let Luke Walton enjoy Thanksgiving with his family as head coach of the Kings and revisit it then. I want you all to circle December 15th on your calendars. That is a huge date for the NBA. 96 players around the league are unlocked and tradable after December 15th. These are all guys that were signed in this past offseason, including Alex Len and Mo Harkless, both on your Sacramento Kings. So I definitely circled that date on your calendar. It has been a very disappointing season for the Kings so far, but when we come back, we're going to talk about one of the most disappointing aspects of this season, and that's Marvin Bagley.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Royal Report. To the surprise of many Kings fans, Marvin Bagley has suddenly surged his way back into the rotation. After not playing against Oklahoma City, Bagley recorded 18 minutes in Detroit and 11 minutes on Wednesday night against the Minnesota Timberwolves. He was one of the first players in the game off the bench in both halves against Minnesota. Barry, has Coach Luke Walton suddenly had a change of heart, or is he feeling a little bit of pressure perhaps from the front office to play Marvin Bagley more?
This is a really tough question to answer. This whole Marvin Bagley situation has had me perplexed for the last month or so, ever since the news came out that he was not going to be in the opening night lineup. I know his agent's pissed, his dad's pissed, he is unhappy. But surprisingly, he seemed to had a good attitude towards his Kings team. We do see him on the bench for every game. We see him cheering on his fellow teammates. And other than that report of him refusing to go in during a blowout, we have seen him in 2 more games since then. I feel like Luke Walton is kind of an old school coach or makes guys earn their playing time. And he may not have felt like Marvin Bagley earned his time on the court. Monty McNair, being a GM, being in control of this team, being in control of trades and stuff like that, looks at a young player, former number 2 overall pick, making $11 million this season, and says, maybe this guy needs a shot. Maybe we need to play him and see what we can get out of him for this team or potentially in a possible trade. So to answer your question, I would say yes. I think Monty has a huge impact on playing Marvin Bagley. But I have a question for you, Cal. If it is Luke's fault, if Luke is the one that chose to bench Marvin Bagley, if Luke is all of a sudden fired, is this Marvin Bagley situation fixed?
Well, no, it's definitely not fixed because Marvin has a long way to go before he's back to playing productive minutes for the Kings. It's hard to imagine a guy having such an up and down season for how little he's actually played on the court, but that's been Marvin Bagley's story since the day he came into Sacramento. Everyone wants to talk about how little he's been available and how little he's produced when he has been on the court. The situation is definitely not over, even if Luke Walton is gone from this team, because Marvin Bagley's still playing for the Kings. I think there absolutely has to be some sort of pressure coming from the front office. I don't see any other way around that. The Kings have definitely tried to trade him in the past, and it hasn't worked. They're not going to be able to trade him if he's not playing. So there's probably a mutual agreement here between the coaching staff and the front office of, we agree that this is a problem now, a problem that needs to be addressed, and we can't address it if we continue to just not play him, other than cutting him, which I don't think the Kings are ready to do yet. So it's still a problem. The biggest problem is how he plays when he does get on the court. He looks a step slow. He's not in rhythm. He can't hit a shot to save his life right now, which is the one thing that could really cure some things for him if he could just hit one corner 3 when he gets the opportunity to. So this problem is going to be ongoing, I feel like, for a long time, maybe past the trade deadline and into this offseason.
Yeah, I think it ultimately depends on how well the Kings are playing. If the Kings are winning games, it's all sunshine and roses. Maybe Marvin will get a little bit of playing time. Maybe there won't be such a big microscope around him. But if the Kings are losing games, I think they're going to throw him out there a little bit more. They're going to try and get him some run, maybe help rebuild his trade value, and help make up for some of his inconsistencies over the past few seasons. When we come back from break, we're going to talk about one of the most consistent guys on this year's Sacramento Kings team, and that's Harrison Barnes. We'll be right back. It's no secret, Harrison Barnes is having a career season. 20 points per game this year, 8 rebounds, 1 steal. I know he's cooled off as of recently, but he started out red hot on the season. He's making $20 million this season. Next year is the final year on his contract. He's making $18 million. And then he is a restricted free agent after that. I know he's already gone through one unrestricted free agency period with the Kings, and he chose to re-sign with them. So, Calvin, that begs me to ask you, do you see Harrison Barnes fitting in with this Kings team? I know he's a little bit older. Is he the future of the Kings, or is it time to move on?
I definitely don't think it's time to move on. Harrison, over the last couple of seasons, has not only improved, but he's had the best years of his entire career. You mentioned the hot start he got off to, and he has cooled off a bit as of late, but these numbers are still great numbers. 20 points a game, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, but the shooting percentages are really where it stands out. 48% from the field, 42.5% from 3, and 86% at the free throw line. He is by far one of their best players and most valuable pieces on this team, in my opinion. The thing I've been disappointed with lately is how his lack of aggression. We heard Coach Walton earlier this year say he wants him to shoot 8 threes a game. That's great in theory, but he really has not been putting up those shot attempts much at all recently. I think the Kings are a better team when he is aggressive and looking to score. They're definitely a better team with him on it as of right now. I don't see many options or trades available where you would get rid of him or lose him potentially, and the Kings get better.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I guess I'm a little concerned with the fit. We haven't seen really Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, and Tyrese Haliburton all thrive together. It seems like one has a good game, another has a bad game. They're kind of passing the ball around. I don't know if these guys all fit together and whether they can win with this, but one thing is for sure, I enjoy having Harrison Barnes on this team. I think he's a true professional, and I think he's taught a lot to these young guys on this team. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, Calvin and I are going to put our coaching hat on and take a shot at improving this team.
Welcome back, everyone. It has come to the forefront for a lot of the Sacramento community that Coach Luke Walton might not be the best choice to lead this Sacramento Kings team. Well, don't worry. Barry and I are here to fix all the problems. We're going to play head coach of the Kings for a day and tell you what we think we would do differently. The Kings are handicapped in a lot of ways for me personally. The roster, style of play, the rotations, it's all led to this 6-9 start, and the fact that we still aren't certain which Kings fit in best with the other players on this team. Yes, the roster has been improved. They've hit on draft picks. However, they're extremely guard heavy, as we've talked about before, and they rely heavily on the three-point shot. So where do we go from here? One change that I would make has already happened, and we talked about it on this show and on former podcasts, and that's to start Chimezie Metu at the 4. Since he's come in, he's given them a real jolt of energy. His rebounding, his athleticism, defense. He hasn't shot particularly well, but he is definitely the answer right now for the Kings at the 4 without making a trade or adding somebody through free agent signing. He's playing much, much better than Mo Harkless, and the Marvin Bagley experiment really is not working out. So that is the first change that I would make. Secondly, in addition to Metu, I think the big man rotation needs a little bit of an adjustment. Alex Len, Tristan Thompson, they would get more consistent minutes if I was the head coach. I believe that both of these guys are really valuable pieces to this team. They can give them a lot of energy, rebounds, defense, helping rim protect. And I think that the fact that either one of them has not played very, very well or consistent minutes is really hindering this team. And it could help Richaun Holmes out a little bit as well if there's a more consistent rotation there. In addition, I would love to see this team play faster, pick up the pace, get some more fast break points, get out and run a little bit, use De'Aaron Fox's speed, use Tyrese Haliburton's vision, use Harrison Barnes and Chimezie Metu's athleticism, as well as Richaun Holmes. You've got one of the better floor running big men in the league. I would love to see them play faster. Also, I think, as I mentioned before, the team relies a little bit too much on the three-point shot. We all know Buddy Hield is going to come in and jack it up no matter what. Some days he's going to be on fire. Some days he's going to be ice cold. But as a team, I would like to see them take a few less threes and look for better shots within the offense. I think they need to spread it out a little bit more, a lot like we saw against the Minnesota Timberwolves the other night, how they used Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, and D'Angelo Russell by giving them the space to attack the basket, but also spreading it out and leaving room for open three-point shots. This team right now is 16th in three-point percentage in the league and 15th in attempts per game. So they are middle of the pack, but I think it would serve them well to take a few less threes or more quality threes, rather, throughout the course of a game.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like this team is living and dying by the three at this point, and I don't want to see that, especially with all these guards that are great at getting to the basket. I'd love to see more of the pick-and-roll game between Tyrese Haliburton, Richaun Holmes, potentially Tristan Thompson. I think you hit it right on the head with more consistent minutes for the big men. I think this team needs to play a little bit bigger. We all talk about running up and down the floor and being athletic and agile. I'm happy with Metu in the starting lineup right now, but I might consider switching it up a little bit and getting a little bit more size in there, depending on how they play over these next few games. I'd love to see more movement from this Kings team. Sometimes they get a little bit stagnant on the offensive end. Whoever has the ball, everyone else just stands around and watches. I'm not seeing back cuts. I'm not seeing multiple screens per play. I'd love to see more movement from this team on offense. Another thing that I think is really important for this team is you need to find a way to stagger these 3 point guards in De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Haliburton, and Davion Mitchell. They're all good at different things. And, we've seen some issues with them playing alongside each other. Not saying I wouldn't not start Tyrese Haliburton and De'Aaron Fox together, but I would try and stagger their minutes a little bit more. I want to have more time where De'Aaron is on the court by himself, where he can run up and down it, he can get layups, he can do his thing, and he can dominate the ball. And then when he's on the bench, I want to see Tyrese Haliburton running that pick and roll with, Tristan Thompson, Rashawn Holmes. And then we talked about this early on in the season, but I really like the Davion Mitchell Buddy Hield combo. So I'd love to see some more of that. I know there's a lot of talent on this team. It's just tough to get them all in the right position at the right time. But that's what I would do if I was the coach of the Sacramento Kings. I think more physicality is needed, no easy buckets on defense, and that's where I'm going.
Yeah, and to just put a little caveat out there, that's all you can do from a coaching standpoint, right? We're not talking about trades or making any roster moves. You have to make some adjustments with the cards that you're dealt. So that's where we stand here. We're going to take another break. We will talk more about the Kings' first-round draft pick this year, Davion Mitchell.
Welcome back, everyone. I know one of the most positive things about this NBA season for us Kings fans is watching Davion Mitchell play. I'm really impressed by this young guy. He does everything on the court, and his hustle and his determination and will to win is just intoxicating, and I think it's spreading throughout this team. That just begs me to ask you the question, Cal. Davion Mitchell has shown that he belongs in this league. What do you expect for him the second half of the season?
I expect him to continue to get better. The one thing that Davion has to his advantage over a lot of rookies that come into this league is he's already made such an impact defensively, which is going to earn him minutes no matter what he's doing on the offensive end. He's such a vital piece for them in terms of overall defense, on-ball defending. It's a thing of beauty to watch, to see him play defense on a nightly basis. What's going to continue his development in the NBA and continue to earn him more minutes with this Kings team is improving his offensive play. Yes, he's good at creating space. He's good off the dribble, and we've seen flashes from him this season where he's even had a couple games over 20 points, but his shooting numbers are not good right now. 39% from the field, 29 from three, and 69% at the free throw line. If he is to continue to get better, continue to make a push for perhaps Rookie of the Year, or just to be a more impactful player on this team, that's where he's going to have to improve, is hitting open shots within the rhythm of the offense. He's averaging 26 minutes a game this year. You compare that to Tyrese Haliburton last year. He averaged 30 minutes a game in basically the same role as the sixth man off the bench. A lot less crowded backcourt on last year's team, though. So the fact that he's still getting 26 minutes a game shows you how much of an impact defensively he has made already.
Yeah, I think Kings management here has, decided that they got a steal in the draft. They hit on this draft. That's 2 drafts in a row. That's what you have to do to help build a team, especially a struggling one, and a small market team like Sacramento that doesn't attract many free agents. I think that they feel that Davion is part of the future for this team. I could see a situation where they potentially package him for a star to bring in on this team. That's not something that I would like to see. I would like to see them, trade different assets to bring in a guy like that. But I do see a big trade coming for this Kings team before the trade deadline, and I think Davion Mitchell will have a much bigger impact and responsibility on this team after that trade happens. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to jump into your favorite part of the show, Cowbell Questions, where we take questions from you and we answer them and we have a good time.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Royal Report. We're ringing the bell. It's time for our favorite segment here on the Royal Report, Cowbell Questions, where we turn to you, the viewer, to give us guidance for what we should talk about. Let's get our first question from producer Vinny.
Who would you trade first, Buddy Hield or Harrison Barnes?
Wow, this is a tough question. I know both of their value is really high right now, much higher than it's been in the past. I've been very positive on both of these guys' contracts because they're both front-loaded and they reduce every single year. But honestly, this is a tough one to answer because it really depends on what I'm getting back in a trade and who's going to fill in. This Kings team has been guard heavy, so that makes Buddy Hield, I guess, a little bit more expendable, even though he's been by far the best three-point shooter on this Kings team. There's not many other wings on this roster to replace a guy like Harrison Barnes. So if I'm not getting a wing back, I got to trade Buddy first.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. It, like you said, it totally does depend on the context of the deal, who you're getting in return. But if I'm just looking at who I would offer first between these two, it's got to be Buddy Hield. Harrison Barnes, as we mentioned before, is riding a big high right now in his career. The last 2 years, he's been so productive. He currently leads the team in scoring. He's incredibly efficient, which Buddy Hield is not always quite as efficient. He's very, very streaky. Harrison Barnes gives you a little bit of everything while he continues to improve every year. He is one of the older players on this team, but he's nowhere near the end of his career. He's still got a bunch of good years left. And like you mentioned, they're very weak at wing depth. So trading away not only one of your best players, but a position that you're incredibly thin at is going to leave you high and dry, in my opinion. So yeah, Buddy Hield, not to mention his trade value may be higher than it's ever been. So Buddy Hield is the guy that I'm letting go first.
And Harrison Barnes makes less money right now. He's going to be a free agent sooner, so it gives the Kings an opportunity to either move on from him at that point or re-sign him for potentially less. And he's had no drama surrounding him. I love what I've seen from Buddy this past season, but we have seen drama in the past, and the Kings actually did try and trade him a few different times. So, yeah, I'm going to trade Buddy first. Next question.
If you could bring in any player to start a Kings rebuild, who would it be?
Okay, so if I understand this question correctly, there's no stipulations, no contracts that you have to be worried about. You're not worried about wrestling a player away from any team. It's just pick a guy and start the rebuild with. So in that case, there's certainly a ton of young talent that you could choose from in the NBA right now, guys that are going to be around for a long time and play really, really at a really high level. But for me, I'm going to go with Giannis. Giannis is still relatively young. He's entering the prime of his career. He not only has gotten better and better every season, but he's turned himself into a multiple MVP player. He's now won a title, and he fits a very big need for the Sacramento Kings. Somebody who could play the power forward position, but also stretch the floor, be a wing player, a dominant defensive player, and a guy who really has the right attitude, I think, is a good teammate. People like playing with him. I think he could be a really big game changer for a franchise like Sacramento.
Wow. I would love to have Giannis on this team. I'd love to have Doncic on this team, but I think I'm going to take a little bit more realistic approach to this question. The way I read that question is more of, what are you going to trade everybody on this Kings team for someone to build around? I feel like there are some building pieces on this Kings team already in Tyrese Haliburton, Davion Mitchell. So if I were to target a guy, I would look around the league. There's a couple guys on the Pelicans I like. Zion Williamson, I know he's had issues with weight in the past, but I feel like he is an achievable guy that the Kings could potentially pry away from the Pelicans. He has a really high upside, and I'd love to see what he can do in this NBA once he gets healthy. I also am a big fan of Brandon Ingram. I think he would fit really well on this Kings team, especially along Tyrese and Davion. And then lastly, I got to go with my guy Michael Porter Jr. with the Denver Nuggets. if you've watched this show, you know I've been a huge fan of Michael Porter Jr. for a really, really long time. This guy is big. He can do everything on the offensive end of the floor. He's young, and I feel like he is going to have a stellar NBA career. So those are a couple guys that I would target if I were the Kings and I were deciding to blow it up, trade for another young piece to help build this core. Next question.
Can the Kings sustain success with this current style of play?
You want to go first?
Making me look dumb, man. You get to pick 3 guys, and I only picked 1.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding. I'm
sorry.
I'm just messing with you.
It is a very, very tough question.
It is. And as we both said or both talked about in our answers, you could take it a lot of different ways. So
yeah. What success would be my response to this question? There hasn't been much success from this Kings team this season. I think maybe they won 2 or 3 games in a row, which they were not able to sustain. I am not a huge fan of this playing style, especially with this roster. You know, it's good to get up and down the court. It's good to shoot a bunch of threes, but I don't know how long you can live and die by the 3.
yeah, I agree with you that there is no sustained success right now for the Kings. They haven't made the playoffs in 15 years. They've been below 500 for I don't even know how many years in a row. There is no success for them to sustain right now. The style of play, it's nice. They are scoring a bunch of points. They're, as we mentioned, 4th in the league in scoring right now, which is all good as long as you're winning games. I don't know what necessarily needs to change. Like we've talked about before, playing faster, maybe taking less threes or more quality threes, continuing to attack the rim. Points in the paint, I think, should be a big point of emphasis for this team moving forward. But this style of play, just like last year's style of play and the year before that, did not earn them any success. So I can't say that necessarily it's going to change right now. I think the team is talented enough, but I agree with you. They need to tweak a couple of things here, whether it's playing a bigger rotation, more consistent minutes for these big guys, or whether it's maybe making a trade and getting rid of this huge, heavy-handed backcourt to try to bring in some wing depth and play to a different style that way. They need to make some sort of adjustment because they are not having any success right now. That is all the time we have for Cowbell Questions this week. Thank you very much for your submissions. If you'd like to hear Barry and I answer a question of yours on a future show, all you have to do is write it down in the comments section below this video and hashtag it Cowbell Questions. Thank you very much. Again, we will be right back to wrap up the show. Welcome back to the Royal Report. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's show. Barry and I are always happy to be here to bring you the most up-to-date and latest Sacramento Kings news. As we look ahead to next week, the Kings have an incredibly difficult slate ahead of them. The next 7 games are all against teams that are right at or above 500, many of them being playoff teams from last season. We talked about going into last week as a huge opportunity for the Kings with a favorable schedule to get a little bit of a cushion in the win-loss record. Kings failed to do that, so now they enter this week with a much, much more difficult level of competition and a lot more pressure on their shoulders. 4 games this week against the Toronto Raptors, the Utah Jazz, Philadelphia 76ers, and Portland Trailblazers. Barry, what do the Kings have to do to come out with a winning record this week?
Oh, man. It is going to be another rough week of Kings basketball. I can say one positive thing. All 4 of these games are at home, which is nice. I know the Kings haven't played the best at home this season, but this could be their chance to turn it around. All 4 of these teams are fighting for playoff positioning, so it is going to be difficult for your Kings. But if the Kings do want to make the playoffs, they need to beat teams that are making the playoffs. It's just as simple as that. I'm not going to make a prediction this week. It has not gone well the past few weeks, so no prediction for me. But I want to let you all know that Calvin and I will be going live tonight after the game. So we'll catch you all after the Raptors game. Hopefully it is a Kings victory, but you never know at this point. I also want to give a quick shout out to Jason Williams, White Chocolate. Happy birthday. You turned 46 yesterday. Thank you all again for watching the show. We'll catch you all after the game, and we'll see you next week on the Royal Report. But in the meantime, go Kings.
Go Kings.
Thanks, guys.